Hi everyone, and welcome to the meetup for October. Today, I think we have a pretty cool subject, and I think we're lucky to have Eirik here presenting with us. We'll be talking about AI development tools, both to help with kind of like programming projects generally, but also to like apply context for DHIS2 projects, which can be quite specific. So the format that we imagine today is that Eirik can talk for a while, probably about half of the hour. And then after that, we can open up for questions and for people to present how they use the tools, and we can kind of start a discussion and kind of compare notes on what's effective and what's less effective. And so, if you let's see. If you're planning on presenting, you can send me a DM in the chat. That'll help me know, but also feel free to chime in when it's time. I'll just have to grant you access to share your screen if you have a presentation, but it's also fine just to share whatever you have, share any experiences or tips or workflows that you have. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Eirik to present what he's got about AI development tools.
Yep. Cheers, Kai. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for showing up and listening to me ramble on about the AI once again. It's not the first time, and it definitely won't be the last time. So I'm very happy that so many people have shown up. I'll start sharing my screen, and we can go through a bit how I was planning to do this today. I'm trusting you can all see my screen. Um, So I was hoping for this to give you a more of a hands-on and a bit more or more of a demo of seeing how I actually use AI and how I use it in my own development and all that. Before we can actually do the hands-on things, I think there are some pretty important topics that I need to sort of go through before we get there, just to get everybody up to speed. So I've created this short slide that I think will go through a bit, and then we'll jump back and forth and into my development area and all of that. Uh, I'm talking about AI, which is a bit of a polarizing topic at the moment, especially when it comes to developers, because there's a lot of sort of hype going around, and it's definitely become this thing where you either perhaps love it or hate it. And we'll go through a bit of the reasons why and all that. Um, the one thing that I definitely feel is that when I talk to a lot of developers about how I use AI and how I feel that AI can actually improve my workflows or make me develop things faster, I always get a bit of pushback, which I think is very good. But I've also learned that the best way of sort of explaining that I actually feel like I'm producing things faster is by just doing it and actually showing you. So for this demo, I thought about doing a PowerPoint or something like that, but then you're all developers, so why not just code everything and just make a custom app with all my slides. So that's what you're seeing here, and that's what we're going to go through. I'll start off by telling a little bit about me because I think it's a bit important. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Eirik. I'm one of the core developers here at the university. That's where I'm sitting now, and I'm based in Oslo. I've been working with the DHIS2 team for close to 6 years now. And I have had the pleasure of working with a lot of the people that are in this call and just looking through the participants list. And most of you know me from coming from the tracker team. That's where I started, and that's where I had my first sort of 5 years. And I worked on the capture app and developed the new capture app that is replacing the old tracker capture app. For the last year or so, though, I've been transitioning into the climate team and been working more and more on the modeling app and the chat side of things, where we look at the very, very interesting concept of bringing together your already existing health data with either local or global weather data and seeing if we can use machine learning models to do predictive analysis and see if we can try to figure out that there's an outbreak coming before it even happens. Um, for those of you who has been working close with me for the last years, you'll also know that I am very much an AI enthusiast and have been sort of talking about this for multiple times and do use AI quite heavily in my own work, which is why I'm invited here to talk about it. Um, Before we start off, I just want to say a couple of disclaimers because I feel like that is quite important as well. I want to say that everything that you'll see and everything that I'll talk about and all that in this session are just my personal opinions. AI is so new that there's not really a set of best practices. That's not really a set of rules that you need to follow when you're doing AI development or anything like that, because things change so rapidly. Even from the time that I started writing these slides to today, there have been changes in the AI world. So things are changing all the time, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to show you uh, this is how I do it, and feel free to pick up on anything that you want and try it out. And if not, that's also totally fine. The second disclaimer I want to say is that it's becoming more and more clear to the people that are working more with generative AI and all that we're probably in a bubble. AI, as it is massively hyped, and even though it is massively hyped, it's probably still either very much overhyped or very much underhyped. And as we're standing now, it's not really clear to anyone which way that will tip over. It might revolutionize the world, or it might end up in the state that it is now, and nothing really more comes of it. The reason I'm saying it is that I still think if it's a bubble, and even if that bubble pops, we will come out the other end and still find LLMs as a really important and useful tool, which is why I'm spending so much time trying to investigate it. The last disclaimer is that for this session, we're looking at using AI for enhancing your developer experience and workflows. We're not really looking at trying to get AI into your products. That will be a separate session, as Kai mentioned. Or at least it has been rumored that this will be a second session, and I'm mentioning it here because one, we're focusing on developers now, and then two, now Kai doesn't really have another choice than to invite me for the product session as well, because I have a lot of opinions in that as well. All right, so as I was sort of writing this slide deck, I was starting on Monday, I think, and I was doing it simultaneously while watching the OpenAI Dev Day. And for those of you who don't know, the OpenAI Dev Day is like a one-day conference kind of thing that they do every year, where they release a lot of things that are very specific to developers. And it sort of took me back to last year when they did the Dev Day last year. It's only 1 year ago, but at that point they had just released this brand new frontier models called the O1 family. And for those of you who remember that, the O1 family was like it was a bit revolutionary because it was the first time that a model didn't just spew out an answer right away, but it appeared to take a step back and sort of think and reason about the answer before giving it back to the user. And for me, it was sort of like a turning point to a certain degree because it was the first time where I felt like as a generalist, an AI model was probably a better software developer than me. And I didn't really say it to anyone because I did think that would cause some pushback, and I still think it sort of does. But the way that I resonate this is that if you're taking an AI model and you're throwing it out into a random repository with a random language and giving it a random task, chances are the AI is probably going to be better at doing some one-off development there than I would. I am highly specialized, and I'm pretty sure that I could beat the model in doing some weird web development things. but throw me into a Rust repository or a Go repository or something like that, I wouldn't even be able to understand the syntax, right? And that's 1 year ago. And the models that we have now are just immensely better. They're so much better compared to the old ones, and even just using the old ones feels like a going back to the Stone Age, right? Compared to the models that we have today. And I've also added those in here. This is a logo for the Claude 4.5 Sonnet, which is the brand new frontier model from Anthropic that we got a month ago, and also the GPT-5 different models, the family of GPT-5s. So that sort of made me think a bit. If these models are so good and they're sort of outperforming humans on most benchmarks, how come so many developers don't really get the same experience, and how come people aren't getting this massive form of intelligence into their work? And I really had to dig into this and started looking around and really learn how these things are built up from the ground up. And I think the most sensible answer, for at least for myself, is that it's no longer about the model. You can do amazing things with the model itself, but it's more about the model's context and what the model sort of sees and knows about the world. And context is a very, very important topic. And it's the topic that I'll sort of focus the most on this presentation. And if it's one thing that you can take away from it, it's how to utilize this context and how to make it actually work in your favor to get a lot better outcome than what you usually would. Now, to sort of explain this concept, I struggled a bit, because how do you explain the concept of a technology living on a server somewhere? And it's very, very hard. So my creative mind went to the place where we just created some artwork. And this is, of course, a GPT artwork, as you can see, but it's sort of, this is how I envision an agent is living. If an agent was a living human being software developer, it would be something like this. And an agent is sort of locked in a box. It has a lot of memories, but it has no windows, it has no doors, it doesn't see the outside world. It has no idea about your code base, it has no idea about the latest framework. It can guess, but all of that guessing is just in its training data. And if you're looking into the training data, then it's just numbers, right? And you get hallucinations, and it's very hard to like know whether or not this is correct. So everything that you need to teach this AI model comes through this small letter opening at the end of the room with a long, long document. And in the case of an AI is probably a senior engineer. We sort of know that because it can produce a lot of great output, but you sort of have to do the onboarding of everything every time you open a new chat. You have to tell it about the code base. You have to tell it about the structure of how you're doing software development. You have to tell it about the team culture, all of these things. It's like if you're hiring a brand new senior engineer on your team and you're throwing it to the wolves and seeing how it performs. You need to sort of do the full onboarding and telling it what it needs to know to actually do the tasks. And the context in this image is just uh, everything that you pass to the AI through the API, for example. So context is really that long document that you're passing on to the agent. And that long document is the only way that the agent knows what's going on outside of that room. It's sort of the AI's lens to the world. It's how it's perceiving what's happening outside. And context used to be pretty simple. And I've added an illustration of how it used to be. You used to just have like a system prompt on top with some instructions, and there might be some simple hard-coded rules and all that. And then from there and onwards, it was just your conversation history. So if you were doing software development in the early days and you were just using it through ChatGPT, actually I might switch to light mode for this. If you're just doing it through ChatGPT, then your job was to go into your IDE, VS Code, or wherever, copy the files that you thought were relevant, copy them back into ChatGPT, and you would get a really long message, and the AI would basically just spit you back some code, and it didn't try it out, it didn't test it, all of this, it just gave you a code snippet, and your job was to copy it back in and test it out. That's not really how it works anymore. AIs have iterated enormously when it comes to this context things, and it's usually looking a bit more like this now. And all of these different boxes sort of represent different things that you're passing into the AI. And some of them are automated if you're using the correct tools. We'll come back to that. And some of them are something that you need to be very, very conscious about when you're doing AI development. And you still have the conversation history and you still have the relevant files and all that, but it's passed in a much different way. And it's usually also passed in an order that suits whatever model that you're actually using, just to squeeze the most sort of performance out of your model. And the last thing to sort of know is that this context is nice, and some models have a huge context window and they can take in a lot of text. But all research points towards if you're passing in not enough information, the agent doesn't know enough about your code base, and the results getting back from it will be very poor. You won't get the performance, but also if you're overdoing it and passing in way too much information, way too much stuff, files that aren't relevant, for example, old conversation history when you're trying to do something else, all these things, performance will be degraded very, very heavily, and it really will be noticeable. So your job as a software development, if you're using AI for anything, is basically just engineering this context so that it gives you just like the golden middle way of just enough information, but not too much, and also in a dense format. So context is super, super important. I'll jump over into my IDE right now, so you can see sort of how I would start doing software development when using AI. You'll see that the editor of my choice, the IDE of my choice, is a thing called Cursor. I trust you can see the screen still. But this thing called Cursor is basically, it was forked off from VS Code a long time ago, and they're sort of building AI natively into VS Code, and it has a lot of tools that are really, really good when it comes to using AI for understanding your code base and understanding your intent. And I won't say that you should use Cursor and anything like that, but I'll come back to why I think you really should at least consider something like it. But as you can see, for everyone that's used an IDE before, this is very recognizable. You understand how this looks, right? And you see that you have all your files on the left-hand side. I have one file open, which is the app.tsx, which is just my entry to the app. And it looks like a big app, and that is because it sort of is. And what you're looking at here is just the modeling app, which is sort of your front end for using CHAP in DHIS2. It's a custom DHIS2 app that we built here at the university. And the reason why I chose this app to do sort of demos on is because I feel like it's good to see that this also works on like production code bases, not only on greenfield projects or sort of simpler apps. I also have a deadline on a page that I need to implement. The deadline is tomorrow, so I'm starting to run out of time. So that's why I thought, all right, why not just do it together, and I can talk to you guys while I actually do my job. All right. So what I would typically do here, if I'm trying to implement a new page, I would toggle the AI panel on the right-hand side. And this opens up something that should be very familiar to most of you. It's just a text input field, and with some extra things like You can select what kind of mode you want. I'm choosing the agent, so I'll explain why in a later in an instance. You can also choose all of the different models that are available in Cursor. So for now, I'm choosing the GPT-5 Codex one, which is a very, very good model, which is my daily driver for doing development right now. And I would recommend you trying it out at least or something like that. Um, I'm a Gen Z, and it's 2025. So I don't really talk to my computer anymore. I don't really type in my computer anymore. I use voice to text and just talk to it. I'll try that now. I had no idea if that works with Zoom, but we'll try it out. But I would start off with something like this. I want you to implement a new page in this application. Yeah, okay, it works. And I trust that you can hear me as well while I'm doing that. Um, I want this new page to have a route at, and then I just have the route slash configured models or something like that. Um, Please follow the structure of the jobs page and just implement the scaffolding for now. This page will fetch configured models and display it, but for now, don't implement any of that. Just follow the file structure and start off easy. I would say something like that. It's highly like subjectual and you don't really have to carefully think out and everything. It will sort of understand your content. And as you can see, the agent starts working immediately. It's thinking, it's planning, and then it starts reading the files that you have. And it starts reading out, for example, the pages. It finds the job page. It finds the it starts preparing a new configured models route and all that.
I think one thing
Sorry,
I want.
somebody. Yeah, I'll move on. Yeah, thanks. If there are questions, feel free to interrupt. That's totally fine. But yeah, as you can see, it starts off and it creates all of these different things. And it tries to read your context, and this is context engineering done sort of automatically for you. It will try to look into the relevant files, find the files that are relevant for whatever you're trying to do here, and then bring you back a sensible outcome. And it takes a bit of time. But as you can see, it's starting to create the different pages here. And it starts off creating an index file and a configured models page. You can see that it also added this to my router. So it added a new path with configured models with this configured models page. If I go into this configured models page, then it also added a page header. I never really like told it to use the page header, but it's sort of based on the context of my ID. It sort of understood it, and then my ID is just yeah, it takes some time to update every now and then, so that's why it wasn't wrong. But it looks at the way that the jobs page is set up, and we can look at that, and it's very similar, right? It's still using the page header, and it's using like this jobs content kind of thing. So everything that the page itself is rendering is a page header, and then it's pointing to something else, which is in the component slash page component. And if the AI has done correctly now, it has also understood my content that I want this separate thing under somewhere else. So in my components, just next to my jobs, there's this new folder now with configured models. And it has an index, it has the page itself, which is a placeholder. And then it also added a CSS file because it understands that we need to do CSS in this page. So it's following the structure completely because I told it to look at this one page, for example. Now, the next part is that I want to implement some sort of hook that fetches the correct data and renders it out. Now, I already know that I have a hook that sort of does the same thing in this repository. So I'll tell it to use that. Um, okay, so I want you to use the useModels.ts hook and fetch all the configured models. And as you can see, as I'm talking in this input, it sort of understands that, okay, it's I want to reference this thing called useModels. And it's actually referencing the file, which is useModels, which is just the same as you would with DHIS2, and you would sort of reuse things that you already built. I did try this exactly briefly before, and it sort of I told it to specifically create a new hook because I didn't know that we actually had this hook, but it went through the repository and it actually found it by using like searching for files and all that. I don't want you to do anything special right now, but I want you to show an appropriate loading state and error state, and also just render it in a list. So it will go through, and once again, it will sort of try to understand what is happening in the jobs page. We can see how it works, but in the jobs page and in the jobs content, it also does this similar kind of thing, right? So once I trigger off this action, it will try to understand where it's coming from and all of that. And this thing that I just did is very, very important, and it brings me back to the slide here for just a second. And the first tip that I'll really, really like try to um, convince you of doing is using and tagging different files that you know the sort of the same functionality that you do want. I've called it show don't tell, and it's basically the same as with the agent picture that I showed previously, where it would be very hard for me to describe to you guys what my perception of how an agent looks without actually just showing it. You can say much more about how things should be, in my opinion, by showing examples of doing this or this. The models today are sort of like experts in finding patterns. So they're experts in looking and extracting just the information that they need from a file if you tell it to sort of use this or use that. So when I'm doing development, I'm usually always telling it just a few sort of key files where I know that it will get something out of it and it will be like a start. And even if I did that, you're still seeing that it's probably, yeah, it's still doing its own searching. It's still trying to see what are the types here, for example, where is this hook used and all that. And it's come back with what I believe is a sensible answer. We can go into the content and you can see here that it's produced it's loading and then it's error. And this looks correct to me. It also created this list item thing. And if we go into the app, you can now see that it's added this configured models on the left-hand side. And if I open that, it's added it to the list of yeah, it's rendered out the list of all the configured models. Now, of course, this isn't really how I want it to look, of course, and it looks a bit different. Yeah, I'll show you the is loading states as well. For example, we can do and just add true, for example, and this is the loading states. It's simple. It adds a loading spinner, and also if there's an error, let's see if it manages to also produce an error. Yeah, it gives you the generic error that you show everywhere else in the app as well. An unknown error occurred. All right. If I'm moving on from here, say that I now want to take all of these items and I want to show it in a DHIS2 table or something like that. I want to display it in a table instead of just rendering out the list. I have all of these messages now and all of these tools that you can go through in your agent up here, and all of that is sort of related to what I'm trying to do, but not fully. So right now, what I would do is that I would just remove all of this, start a new chat, remove everything that sort of clouds the context of the agent, and just start over and rather just explain what is happening here. And Cursor has this really amazing feature called just branch, which just diffs whatever you're doing in your branch with the main branch and gives you like an insight in what are the changes in this branch and what are you trying to do, for example. So you can basically just ask it, what is this branch doing or something like that. I don't want to do that, but I still want to tag it, and I still want to like force the AI model to go through and build up that context and look at the files that have been changed and added and all that. This looks great. Now, I want to display this list in a data table. This data table comes from the DHIS2 UI library. And DHIS2 is something that it always trips up on. Comes from the DHIS2 UI library. We're doing that other places in the app as well, so go ahead and look for relevant code snippets. And when I trigger that off, it will do that. It will first start to try to like read different files, trying to understand the user intent, all that, and then it will go through and look at the branch and look at the diff and all that. And this might take a while. So I'll head back to the presentation, and I'll show you the tip number 2, which I think is very, very important to sort of drill in. And tip number 2 is just don't overdo it. A lot of people are thinking about AI as like, if it spits out 1,000 tokens or 100,000 tokens, it doesn't really matter because it's an AI. It's a machine. It never gets tired and all that. But I would actually go the other way around and say you should follow sort of the best practices of doing software development in general. So when I'm making a new page, for example, I'm not saying that I need a new page with a new hook that fetches things with a new table and all that. I'm breaking it down just as I would to a junior developer if I'm trying to explain it to somebody else on my team, for example. And if I were to get another developer on my team to implement this brand new page with lots of functionality and all that, that's how I probably would have done it, right? I would do an opening task where I just looked at a small piece of it, and then from there you can sort of build upon it. And you don't try to do everything at once, but you make sure that each piece of the puzzle is sort of completed before you move on. And I've sort of created a animation for how I would envision it with, let's say we're trying to build this thing right here, and it looks like a dashboard, right? And dashboards usually contain a lot of information and a lot of functionality that might be very advanced. And probably most of you have tried just entering into vSphere or Lovable or any of these tools that sort of do the vibe coding for you. And just create me a dashboard and all that. And it would sort of work. It will give you a ish working dashboard, but it will be simple. It won't be as advanced as you would make it yourself. And if, let's say, we're starting off with an empty workspace, and the first thing that I would do if we're trying to recreate this dashboard is I would do the thing that I just did. I would try to understand like the page shell of it and how everything sort of should look around it and really like yeah, just make the shell and make everything that the dashboard is going to live within. And for this case, it's basically just a couple of titles and perhaps a button in the top corner that doesn't really do much for now. From there, I would probably commit that page shell and perhaps even consider merging it in or something like that. At least I would create a new chat history to not cloud up the context of all that. The next step I would do is that I would really focus on this top left widget. I would look into making that production worthy and try to like develop that and just that. Once I'm done with that, then we move on to the bottom left widget. And then once we've done both the page shell, but also the two perhaps biggest widgets, then and only then can you start experimenting with getting more output of your AI, for example. So in the next step, then I might try to actually do all three of the remaining cards on the right-hand side. But it needs like um, a fixed point to understand how you want this to behave and how you want this to act and all that. So that's how I would split it up, and you can also see that in the way that I'm doing development here, that I'm splitting it up in the same way. Now you'll see that it's produced an answer back, and this was a bit of a bigger one, so you can see that it's also doing something that is also very cool in Cursor, is that instead of just rambling on and spewing out an answer, it starts doing exactly what a software development developer would do. It would start creating a to-do list or a task, and it would start putting up the bullet points of what it needs to do. So first, it would sort of build this configured models table, which is a new component. We didn't tell it that it needed to be a new component, but it understood that from the code base itself, from elsewhere in the code base. And from there, it takes in the models and renders it, and then it goes through and makes sure that you use this new one, and you make sure that the empty states and the styles and all that is correct. So we can go ahead and look what it created, and as you can see, it's the DHIS2 data table. It looks a bit crowded because of the description, but other than that, it looks pretty all right. It shows the display name, description, and target and all that. We can go in and actually look at how this table is set up. And you can see I'm right here, it's produced this use React table. And use React table is something that comes from the TanStack React table. If you're a React developer, then you might recognize it. But nowhere in this text did I actually tell it that it uses this. It's understood that from looking at other places in the code base, and understood that in this project, then we're using this TanStack table. Um, and it from there builds out this TanStack table and displays it using the data table column headers and data table, all these things coming from the DHIS2 UI. All of that because you're sort of pinpointing the context, and Cursor is very, very good at finding the correct context. All right. I guess perhaps the last thing I'll do is that from here I'll just keep all of it because I'm happy with it. Usually I would go through here and I would sort of read through the code and try to understand it more and just look that everything is correct. For in the interest of time, I'll drop that now. The last thing that I really want to do is that I just want to can you implement a sorting on the display name? I don't think there's anything else that really needs sorting. Yeah, you can also see that it's added like pagination and advanced things because it's using this TanStack table and all that. Yeah, let's just start off with a display name. And this is the exact same thing. It's just a different UI and a slightly better agent that Cursor provides you. It's a new functionality that you can try out. It's doing the same thing. I actually didn't even tell it to. I'm not sure if I told it which file even, so I'm not sure if it's understanding that it should implement the changes in the configured models table. I guess we'll just wait and see. Okay, so that was tip number 2. Break it up into small changes. Don't overdo it. Do things incrementally, one at a time, and make sure to reset your context and reset your messages, and make sure to start over. Tip number 3, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, then it probably is a duck. It's a famous saying. And for AI models or AI chatbots in general, this probably is not the case. What I mean by that is with AI chatbots, you don't really know what's going on underneath it. You don't really know if you're getting sort of the best outcome that you can because you don't see the context around it. And in Cursor, it gives you some information about how much context you've filled up. You can see that I've filled up around 8.9%. It's actually want to run the yarn lint as well. And sure, it's not the correct one, but it can go through and read the package.json probably next. And it also tells you what directories it's looking at, yeah, there you go. What directories it's looking at, what files it's looking at, and you can sort of understand the context of it, but it's very hard to know. So I've built these two different views here, and I'll start them both. It's a simple question: how does navigation work in your app? And it's for both, and you can see that it's all using the same model. It's using the Claude 4.5 Sonnet. This is of course mocked, but the conversations are painstakingly real. And this one finishes quite early and it gives you like an output of it uses React Router DOM and hash-based router exposing routes for profile, blah blah blah. And that's sort of it's true. But if you're comparing it to the one on the right hand side that is using the exact same model, it's starting to read the project memories. Yep, I see you guys. It's starting to read the project memories. It's starting to read the package.json. It understands the exact same thing where it's using React Router DOM and all that. But it's also starting to understand that there's something else going on here. It sees the different components that I'm using, but it's also reading suddenly that I'm using a D2 config. And it's starting to read the README. And from there, it understands that, okay, this is not just a regular VTAP, this is something else. So it starts searching the web for DHIS2 app bundling, for example, and it actually reads the documentation of the developer's documentation, and it reads this sync URL with global shell, which is a file that we have in this in this repository, and it gives you back a much better result. And it's sort of it understands that this is something else, and saying that it's in this global app shell in DHIS2. It's served inside this DHIS2 app shell, and it's using this very important file to keep it up to sync and all that. As you can see, the results from these two are very, very different, but it's using the same model. Context is the main important part. And when I talk to developers and I show them Cursor and all that, a lot of them are thinking, yeah, but I use GitHub Copilot. I've tried GitHub Copilot and the agent functionality there, but the output that I got from it is very, very bad. This is probably the reason. It's not really the model, it's more of the context. And the context of these frontier tools is much better than, for example, GitHub Copilot or even worse, like ChatGPT or something like that. And if you're getting bad output from your model, I would start in that end and I would start looking into how can I actually improve the context. I mentioned frontier models deserve frontier tools. I won't really try to convince you anymore. This felt more like a sales pitch than what it was supposed to be. I'm using Cursor. You can also use Windsurf, which are full-blown IDEs. You have these terminal UIs called Cloud Code and OpenAI Codex, which are made by Anthropic and OpenAI, which runs in your terminal. And they're doing the exact same things. What these things are doing so differently is that they're much, much better at this context engineering and context management. And they're using the exact same models that you can find in GitHub Copilot and all that, but the context is just so much better. I also wanted to mention a background agent here, which is Devin, which is a background agent that we're using for many different things in DHIS2. We're sort of proud to announce that Devin rewrote our entire capture app from an old language called Flow into a much more modern TypeScript right now. And it's using the same models, but it's using like memories and understanding memories and all that. I see that I'm totally running out of time. We can see how the model ended up doing. And you can see it added the sorting on this display name. And if I'm guessing correctly, then it's using it through this sorting function and it's all up to date and all that. I would recommend you looking into using cursor rules or cursor context and just pasting, for example, documentation in your chats and all of that to build up your um, uh, sort of the AI's knowledge about the things that you're very, very specifically trying to do. But the main important part, just show it where and just show it what you want to have done and all that. I'll leave it there. I could talk way longer about this. If there are questions and all that, please feel free to let me know, and I can answer everything more in detail later. So yeah, I'm sorry to spend so much time, Kai.
No problem at all. It's super interesting to hear, so I wanted you to keep going. So thanks for that awesome presentation. Just in terms of the kind of like what we'll do next, my thoughts are I want to respect other people's time. They might have to go somewhere else after this hour, but I will be able to stay longer. The meeting will continue to be recorded, and if anyone needs to drop off, then we can continue the conversation in the COP thread after that. But I think what makes sense to do now is like share any questions or comments directly from the what IRIX presented now, and then if people have use cases that they want to present, you go ahead and yeah, raise your hand and let me know. But we can start with questions and comments that have come up so far. Really? No questions? I have one.
I have
There is
one.
a question.
Yeah, I have several. But you can go ahead, Mozafar.
I'll also write them here, but I thought maybe it's easier. It's like the models themselves. If you can give us like an overview of like their strengths and weaknesses, cost really. If any of them can run locally and that works in practice, if it's okay to mix and match, start with one model and switch to another. And related to it are some models better than others in certain things, certain languages, certain types of tasks. That's how you found your experience so far.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very good question, and the differences between AI models is quite huge. The the main biggest sort of models, frontier models right now, are sort of generalist developer models. So when I'm sitting in Cursor, that's usually the GPT-5 Codex or the 4.5 Sonnet, which are two different frontier models, one made by Anthropic and one made by OpenAI. You also have the larger ones with Opus and GPT-5 Pro, for example, but these are different ones. You have uh, the Grok models, which is made by XAI and Elon Musk, which are like super, super fast and they run through tons of tokens really, really fast. You have the Gemini models that are super good and are known for having like a huge context window where you can cram in entire books and videos and all these different things. When it comes to running models locally, you have some good tools. One of them being, for example, Llama or something like that. Llama, CPPP, for example. There are some tools to do this, and you can run pretty good models on your locally on your computer, and you can add that to Cursor as well through this add models, and you can add them as a custom model. These models are, of course, quite big, and running them on your computer requires quite a lot of RAM. But if you can, then sure, go ahead. It won't reach anywhere near the performance that you can get out of the frontier models, but it will work, and it will be all local. And I've done that several times where I'm sitting on an airplane, for example, and don't have internet access. You can spin up a local model. So some good local models are, for example, Mixtral from Mistral AI, which is a French company, and then you also have the Llama models that comes from Meta, for example. There's a lot as well. I usually do frontier models for coding, and then I use GPT-4o, the old ChatGPT model, when I'm doing writing or anything like that, because it's much better at writing. So everything has sort of its flair, and it's recognizable. If you're working a lot with AI models, you can pretty much tell based on your response which model it is. Yeah. I saw there were something in the chat.
Yeah. Do you want me to read them to you?
Sure, that would be great.
So, one question from Carlos Tejo is, how are you using Devin currently, and what is the vision for the future? And
Great. I'm very
there's a follow-up from Greg Rolls, or that's similar, I guess. How long did it take you to get comfortable with Devin?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, and I didn't have a chance to talk about Devin. But Devin is something that I really love to use, and I use it for pretty much all of my projects now. The thing that Devin sort of does difference is that they're extremely good at this building up this repository knowledge and context of your code base and all that. So for all open source repositories, you can just paste a link and it will create this huge thing about the different packages that this repository uses and how everything sort of intertwines and how it's architected, like how the architect of the code base is. So that's even from there, it's a pretty good starting point. The other thing that Devin does so well is that it has this thing called knowledge, and it builds up this knowledge as you're progressing. And when you're completing a PR using Devin, for example, then it will look through and see if there are findings that it can extract and save for the next time. So if you're, for example, rewriting a JavaScript repository to a TypeScript repository, the first iteration, Devin might start to use interfaces, for example. And then you can tell it in the PR directly, or you can tell it in the chat that, okay, but I want to use types instead of interfaces. And it will store that. And that is all these things that comes down in this list. So what we experienced in the Capture app, for example, where we rewrote from Flow into TypeScript, which is it's a massive rewrite, and it was like 25,000 files or something like that. It's enormous. Was that in the start it took some time, and you had to really like sit down and do the onboarding, and for PRs you would put in comments and all that. But as you progressed on, it exponentially became better and better. And this is how I envision AI models working in the future, where it's sort of it's not retraining, it's not learning anything else, but the context around it gets sort of built for it with memories and sort of these things. So it understands more of the world around it, and it produces better outcome. So I don't remember the exact figures, but for the first 2,000 files or something, we spent probably 2 months setting it up. And then the last 2 months before merging it in, it went through 2,000 files on a day or something like that. So it's incredibly incremental. And Devin was mocked for a very long time, but now I really love it. And when I'm sitting on the subway on my way home, I'm like talking to Devin and making it do changes in the modeling app and in the Capture app and in other applications that we're doing. We also rewrote the modeling app before the climate week this year, and we rewrote the entire app in probably 2 months or something like that, a bit less than 2 months. And we used Devin quite heavily there, and actually sat down and took the time to do onboarding and stuff like that. I would say, just to give you a concrete number, I would say it's probably months, like a couple of weeks to a month, perhaps 2 months, somewhere around there. But then you should start seeing incremental um, performance upgrades from Devon.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for that. The next question is, what plan are you using for Cursor? And this also kind of leads me to another question that I have is, what are your thoughts on the kind of like the pricing models for these tools and the kind of like value that you get out of them?
Mm. Mm. It's a very good question. I'm using the regular Pro plan on the Cursor, which is, I think it's $20 a month. That is a decision that you have to make for yourself, whether or not that is worth it. For me, it absolutely is worth it. Um, I feel like the output that I get from it is much more than the $20 that I sort of put in, because right now, as I said in the beginning, we are in the bubble. So Cursor and Windsurf and all these companies, they have lots of venture capitalist money and are perfectly fine and just burning through that money for now just to get users and all that. So right now, if you're putting $20 into Cursor, for example, you're probably getting closer to $50 or $60 in raw API usage out of it. Of course, this won't stay the same for long. This might change, and when it changes, you need to do a separate sort of. Um, you have to think about it a bit different and seeing how it is then. Devin, for example, is crazy expensive. So it's sort of up to you. But I feel like right now, Cursor Pro is totally worth it. You could switch to Windsurf. You could do any of these, but AI is expensive and it's always going to cost some money.
Nice. Thanks. Oh, there's another question that I missed. It's about the chat. Is the chat core front end widely available?
It is. So Chap is it's sort of not in GA just yet, but it's open and you can install it and all that. The front end app is just available to download from the app hub, and then you need a chat backend to sort of do the modeling and running the machine learning models and all of that. But all of this you can find the information about on DHIS2.org. So everything you can just set up on your own servers and start installing it and bring your own models and bring your own data. And in unison with the climate app, where you can import global climate data and all that, it should work really well in trying to patch everything together.
Cool,
All
thanks.
right.
Let's see. So, sorry, you can go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say it's past 12, so if anyone wants to leave, that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to say if there is anything, then feel free to reach out. I do really genuinely love to talk about this, so feel free to reach out at any time. And also, I do try to like spend some time in making this presentation worth it and all of that. So if you have any feedback on things that weren't really clear or things that I should have gone more into, it would be really, really useful to sort of get feedback on that and understand it. But yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Eirik. It's yeah, really awesome. And yeah, it is 12 o'clock now, so some people might need to leave. I can still stick around. Qasim, you had your hand raised. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind people to redeem their badges, the developer attendee badge. The link is in the chat. So yeah, awesome.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, so thanks everyone for participating. I'm curious, did anyone have we might not yeah, we might not have time for it today, but we might continue this conversation in another meetup. Did anyone have any kind of notes and tips that they wanted to um, present on how they use AI tools? That's okay if not. IOTIC's presentation had a lot of excellent tips as they are. So I think with that, we can wrap up for today. Thanks again, IOTIC. It's super cool to see and very inspiring. And next month, we'll meet up again to talk about integrating AI tools in the products. Like I know of the very cool AI data entry app that Solid Lines have set up, Carlos and Jose. Um, and so there's a lot of really amazing things that can be done with that. And so I think next time, let's talk about that. Share what you guys have going on, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kai.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.